ANA eLearning Academy is brought to you by CDN Graysheet, a trusted source of rare coin and currency valuations since 1963.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the ANA eLearning Academy. The ANA would like to thank our eLearning partner, Graysheet, for their support of the eLearning program. Today, we have William Myers, who will be presenting coins melted to manufacture war material. Now, all attendees will be muted for this presentation. If you have any questions, you may put them in the chat or Q&A box, and I will read them to our presenter at the end of the presentation. And now I will turn the time over for our presentation. William, whenever you are ready, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. And good morning, or whatever time zone you're in there. Yeah, this basically, I'm talking about coins that were melted to make war material, but during World War II specifically. Basically, we all know you need metal to make war material, and then war material has been melted to make coins. Like the classic is the U.S. shell casing cents from 44 to 46. Coins can be melted to make coins, but this is a different topic where the coins are actually used and melted to make war material. And everyone knows PPQ, but for me, it's a pre-presentation quiz. I'm going to present periodic questions to everybody. Obviously muted, you can't answer. Just think about it. And then as I go through, the answers will become obvious. First off, what's the earliest date of a coin melted for war material for World War II? And I don't know how many came close to 970 current epoch, but that is the earliest, and that'll come in later. The other one, what are the two most common metals reclaimed from coins? They are one, nickel. It's used in armor, guns, weapons. It's very important, and it's been told to be the closest thing that you would call a war metal. It's so important for the war material. Next one is copper. Shell casings. This is they need copper for them, which is because they're composed of 70% copper. And of course, copper is used in multiple equipment and other supplies, so that's important as well. Okay. Now, this kind of think of the countries who would need to melt their coins to make their war material. And come up with Germany, Japan, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Italy, French Indochina. I say Poland, and it's a question mark. And I included the United States as a negative. It's not one of them, but there's some issues that I wanted to clarify about the United States. Okay, basically Germany. Hitler had planned for war. He needed to prepare for war. Germany does not have the natural resources for enough nickel to manufacture the material it needs. So what do? Well, it's going to look a little suspicious if you're importing tons and tons of nickel and there's no particular reason for it to get suspicious. Well, what they did in Germany was they minted their 50 Reichspfennig and then 1 Reichsmark coins in nickel. The advantage of this is you store the nickel in coins, which nobody's going to question. It seems very legitimate. And then when the time comes, you just recall the coins. The population has become your storage vehicle. You don't even have to pay for storage facilities or anything. People have them, they just turn them in. Now, there are 2 Reichspfennig, 50 Pfennig nickel coins. It was minted before Hitler. It was minted before the war started in 27, but continued to 39. And then in 38, they minted some with the swastika eagle. But they continued minting them. Now you go through it, they can be found out there. There's most reasonable cost. The ones with the swastika tend to be harder to find. They have good mintages, but they are harder to find and they're more expensive. Well, what happened in 1939? Hitler invaded Poland. World War II started. So that led to the point that you don't need any more reason to hide the nickel. It's open. You're fighting, so no need to hide anything. The 50 Pfennig, the nickel ones, were replaced with an aluminum coins. Now, first one was a 1935 50 Pfennig with an eagle. and a 1939 to 1944 eagle with a swastika. The 35 coin is a little bit of different coin in that it was dated 35, it was minted in 35, but not released until 1939. Hitler had planned this all along, had kept all the aluminum coins in storage, so when the need arose, he called in the nickel. Well, you can't leave your economy without the coins, so he had the aluminum coins available to quickly release into it, sometimes called Hitler's secret coin, because it was made, and really no one ever knew of it till 39. And here they are. Okay, on the bottom left, you can see this is the original coin. Very simple, it's got the German eagle on it. And then you can see 38 and 39, which are the ones that have the swastika eagle and it's similar design with the numeral on it. Now the 1 mark coin, it was only minted under the Nazi reign from 33 to 39. Only one of the coins has a mintage below $1 million. And again, 38 and 39 are the tough ones. They can't be found, they tend to be more expensive. Now again, just like the 50 penny, don't need to hide it after 39. So the coins were no longer minted, but they did have paper notes and 1 and 2 Reichsmarks, which were available to compensate for the lack of the 1 mark coins. There's the 1 mark. It's nickel and had been prior to the war, it was made out of silver. So they converted from silver to nickel. Okay, now why are the nickel coins in 38 and 39 so hard to find, despite the fact if you go to the catalogs, they have a very healthy mintage? Well, what I feel is most likely because of the war started in 39, these coins most likely had not made it out to the circulation yet. They were stored in mints and banks and businesses, and they hadn't put them out. So certainly, if they're just sitting in storage, haven't been released, they're much easier to recall rather than having people individually turn in their coins. So it's probably that large numbers of these coins were melted. They're most accessible, easiest to get. If they're at the mint, they just haul them down to the smelting room. So I think that the actual coins available out there to buy, as it's represented by the value of them, is certainly less than the mintages. So you can't count on the mintages to understand that. Okay, Japan, also preparing for war. Same issue with Germany. They didn't have the natural resources. They didn't have copper, they didn't have nickel. So they needed to store it like Germany, but without raising suspicions. So they did is they made their 1 cent in copper and their 5 and 10 cent in nickel. It was previously copper nickel, so it's a little strange to go from copper nickel to nickel. It's usually the other way around. Again, they avoided the cost of storage. Why? Make the people store them for you, and they could call the coins when they needed them. Now, I will list the Showa year. Showa is, all these coins are dated in the reign year. So Showa is Hirohito. And these are the years for the war that they were produced. For him, it was 2, which would be his 2nd year of reign, to 38. And in 38, there are actually 2 different types. And you can see the mintages range from 3 million to 200 million. So significant increase in the mintages. But at that time, there was no justification. The economy in Japan, they were at war starting back in 33 with China, but still the demands were not that large that really justify a 200 million mintage. They were obviously trying to store the copper for later use. All of these coins you can find out there, are a few harder to find ones, but they're all available. They were used to melt to make shell casings. This was the copper that was going to be for the 70% copper, 30% zinc for shell casings. Again, like Germany, 38, World War II is starting to get into full shape, everything else, so they didn't need them. And so they basically stopped making them out of copper. Now, there are coins, the same, pretty similar design, minted from 1916 to 24 with Emperor Yoshihito. Well, if they were out there being circulated, most likely they were grabbed and melted as well. And in 38, they replaced the copper with aluminum, much cheaper, much easier to make. And at the bottom, on the left is the coin of Hirohito, The one that's the most common on the right is the 1938, where they had that design change a little bit, but that's a one-year type. It was not made in copper after the war. Now the 5-cent coins were made of copper nickel initially, and you can see, and then they changed it to nickel again, Showa 8 to 13, so 33 to 38. And again, mintages are large, but 38, they're getting on full war footing. They minted them, but all but 4 were melted. So it's pretty much non-collectible. After 38, again, no need to hide it. What they do, they release an aluminum bronze coin, again, because nickel was no longer required. Well, it's not required to be hidden, they need it. Here's the coin. Very simple coin, hold. And you can see again, the mintages are quite decent to find. They're easy to find. Occasionally you'll find them in junk boxes as well. The 10 cents, same story. It's made of copper nickel, 233 to 37. They didn't even bother making it in 38. Again, large mintages, easy to obtain. Getting a complete set of those years is not difficult. And 38, again, no reason to hide. They can import nickel for their obvious reasons. And aluminum bronze, again, like the 5, replaced it. So they were prepared to take these coins out, melt them for their material, and then use other coins in the wings ready to go. And here it is, a little bigger, again, center hole. I won't go into the designs parts, it's another story, but these were, again, the nickel coins, again, common. And so I found a few of them even in a junk box, circulated. Okay, now we come up, talk about Romania. Romania was with the Axis. They did, on the side of Germany, they did ally with them. A little kind of a forced ally, but they said they did. Well, Germany was kind of like Big Brother and was pushing them around to some degree. They had minted a 50 LA and 100 lei coin in nickel. They made it the 15, 37, and 38, and the 100 and 36 to 38. There are no 37 coins. They're all dated 36. That date continues, so there's 4 different coins for that, those nickel coins. Well, Germany, of course, still, the war was getting quite a footing. They needed more nickel. So what they did is they had Romania recall all the 1,500 lei coins. And they recalled 300 tons of the coins. There's certainly it's not a small contribution to the war. It's quite a bit of metal that was recalled. Now, how do you get from Romania to the factories in Germany? It's a bit of a, transportation by, truck or train or boat, whatever. You still got issues with security. So what they did, as they've done in the US with the waffling of coins, they canceled them. So they had no value. So then shipping them was, be less security, and less security was required to be minimal. Now, interesting enough, of those coins they melted, they used some for more material, but they had to replace the coins. Didn't replace the 50 lei, but they replaced the 100 lei. They made it in 1943 and 1944. It was made of iron, cheaper, more accessible, but they took some of those other lei coins they melted, took the nickel from them, and they nickel plated those coins and then shipped them back to Romania. They were minted in Germany. Romania, the lei coins, this gives you the mintage. You can see 38 has the least mintage, so it's a little bit of a harder coin to find in regular and uncanceled. Of those mintages, I have no information. I don't think it was ever probably kept how many were canceled. The uncanceled coins are available, even though a lot were melted. They are actually quite reasonable prices. Here's the 100 lei. Again, lower the mintage in 38. Again, it's unknown how many were canceled, how many were melted. And these uncanceled coins are available. Again, the 38 will run you a little bit more than the 36. So they were canceled by minting equipment. They were actually put back into the minting equipment, and they were struck with dies. So they're die canceled, not waffle, nothing like that. They actually went through the minting machinery again. Now, I found, these are the types I have found of varieties out there. First, I call one far space lines, and these lines can be either complete or partial. There's closely spaced lines. There's concentric circles. There's annulat, which is in Kus letters on the coins on both sides. Annulat means annulled or canceled. And there's one with a punch center hole. They did that to the Greenland coins because they were the size of a nickel, and the soldiers kept using them in vending machines in the U.S., and their value was about a quarter of what the U.S. quarter was worth. Now, at the end of the war, when Romania was surrendered and the Soviets came in, the Germans just bolted out of there, and they actually had piles of these coins still left in Romania at the end of the war. And the Soviets came in, they took them, and they issued them back to Russia to use the nickel in them for their industry. Now, the cancel coins are available. Theoretically, if they cancel them and put them up and ship them for melting, they should not be around. Well, they are, and my hypothesis is that there was a time between when the Germans left and the Soviets arrived, and this is probably when people went ahead and took advantage of it. I'm sure they weren't guarded, and that's maybe the source of a lot of the coins we see today. Here they are. This is the series starting in the upper left. Those are the widely spaced lines, which is obvious, and it's complete. They go all the way across the whole coin. On the left, again, those are widely spaced lines, but they're incomplete. They don't go to the top. They don't go to the edges. You see there's missing spots. It's either, I don't know if the dies were breaking apart or there was, lack of quality or carrying. They quickly made things expediently near the end of the war, but it's obviously a different type. The amount of incompleteness is not consistent. You get several of them, and where it is and how much is incomplete is variable. The top right, those are the concentric circles, and you can see between each circular line a bunch of little dots, and you can see through the circles and lines. You can like that when you can read the date on it. The bottom left, that's annulat, very fancy lettering, but it's A-N-U-L-A-T, N-U-L-A-T, yeah, annulat. The next one in the middle bottom, those are closely spaced lines. Obviously, you can see that. Now, all the ones I have seen, the concentric circles and the closely spaced lines are always paired together. So somehow those two dies were used then, and the far bottom one is the center hole. Now, of these, the widely spaced lines are the most common. You go on eBay today and find them. I think second one is the circular design with the narrow space lines is probably the next most common. The annulat is not very common at all, at least from what I have seen. I found 3 of them ever. And the center hole, that's the only one I've ever seen for sale. I've seen pictures and articles and stuff from Romania, but that's the only one I've seen of that. So I find that the hardest one to find out there. Next, I'll go to Czechoslovakia. Well, Germany annexed Czechoslovakia in 1939 and broke it all up. Czechoslovakia, actually, the Sudetenland became part of Germany, so they would use German coins because they considered it a part of Germany. And then Slovakia and Bohemia and Moravia were separate, and they did produce their own coins during the war. Well, Germany recalled the Czech 5 korun coins. They were minted in 37 and 38. They occupied it, so they were the boss, so they called in those coins to be melted. And you can see here the mintage. 37 is a low mintage, and with the melting and everything else, it's very difficult to find that coin unmelted, just finding it. 38 is obviously more common. Germany took over 12 million of the coins, and you look at that mintage between the two of them, that's a significant part of the mintage. And then in 47, the Czechs melted another 2 million coins. So now you're up to 14 million. Still leaves a healthy number out there. And this coin can be obtained for relatively inexpensively. It's not that difficult to find. It's still a couple million out there, but a large majority of the actual mintage was melted down for the war. Next one is Italy. Italy is one of the big 3. Okay. You had Italy, Germany, and Japan. They were the Axis. They'd been at war since 35 when they invaded Ethiopia. So certainly they were needing more nickel, making more war material. Well, they just, again, like Germany and Japan, just looked back into their own coins. and they managed to obtain 1,600 tons of nickel from melting their own 1 and 2 lira coins. Now, they also had a nickel 50 centimes coin that may have been melted as well. I'm not found any specific reference to it, but it's there, same time period. So it's very much probable that went along with it. Now, the mintage is interesting in these coins. They minted 1 lira from 22 to 35, but of that, only 4 of those years had mintages above 500. And I listed the mintages there, so quite collectible. But after that, 29 to 35, the mintages are extremely small and they're extremely rare. So probably the ones I have listed there are the 4 that you can probably, if you want to get a set of them, that you can get. Now, they also minted another variety from 36 to 38. And that one had actually Victoria Emmanuel on it versus seated female on the earlier issue. And out of that one, you got one choice, 1936. Because then there's 119,000, still not a great mintage, but it's available because the rest of those the other 2 years, 37, 38, have 50. That's all. So I don't know if any of those are scooped up in the melting, but either way, those are very difficult. So if you want an example, it's got to be 36. Okay, now we go to 2 lira. Again, 23 to 35 with Victoria Emmanuel, and he was the king at the time. And again, of those, only 5 years have mintages above 50. And they're healthy mintages, easy to obtain. They're quite common. But again, after 27, good luck. I can honestly say, looking around, I have not even seen one for sale in those eras. 35 to 39, again, changed the design and went from the fasces to the eagle. And if you look at the design on the lower right, it should look very familiar because they made the coins starting in 40 out of a kind of a nickel, a copper alloy. And they look exactly like that, so that design continued. But again, you got a 1-year coin if you want to collect it, 120,036. After that, 50 each year. So again, you can only got, this is the only one you're most likely to obtain. And needs to say they do run a premium. The earlier design is much easier to find. Now, French Indochina. France fell to Germany, and they fell in 1940. Well, Germany didn't take over French Indochina and occupy it. They were busy in Europe. But the Japanese used it because it was very important, because it was their way to try to get into China or stop import of weapons and other material into China, because China was at war with Japan. So it was part of their occupation. Well, in Arnhem, which is the prior name for French Indochina, they made copper and brass coins. They had a half and 1 cash. A half one is also known as a 10 band, and a fan for the cash coins. They're minted from 970 to 1945. And that's where I came up with the earliest potential coin melted for World War II is 970. Now, were any melted? Were any available out there? I don't know. I mean, it's just theoretically, it's feasible. Whether it really happened, obviously, no one ever tracks what you melt. They basically seize these coins and send them to Japan to produce war material. Well, in the Pacific War, it got really difficult with shipping. The Allies got very active and were sinking a lot of Japanese shipping, and transporting things was difficult. So as a result, there were lots of the coins left in French Indochina after the war when Japan surrendered. They had piles of them sitting on the docks to be shipped. Well, they were just sitting there. Well, what happened was they were taken, the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh, they took all those coins sitting on the docks, transformed to Hanoi, and they minted 2 dong coins, 1946. You'll recognize it's got the picture of Ho Chi Minh on the coin, but they said they didn't let it go to waste. They weren't put back to circulation. They just actually were used again you got another coin made from other coins. So not really, it's kind of related to World War II, but not related to going into war material, but just has a relationship to it. Here they are. They're the typical cash. They have a round with a square hole in the center. And 500 to 600 of these coins equal to piastre, which was the leftover of the French. It was the denomination used. After the war, they equaled 5 sous, which is kind of like a cent, and 20 of those, obviously 20 of them would equal a dong, because 100 sous equaled a dong. So even after the war, they were still used. They still had some monetary value, but on 13 April 1948, that was the end of them. You can see they're crude. The later years are not that uncommon. The ones I pictured up to 1907, which certainly would have been still probably circulating, and definitely the 1926 to 45s were circulating as well. And so at least these, as I said, any of them out there were probably melted. So, but these are actually, the later years are quite accessible. Reality, I guess you could say any one of them, from the first one to the last one, is collectible. But I think these two have the highest probability of qualifying that they would have been melted during that time frame. Now, Poland. This just comes from what I found, but just knowing the coins. Germany invaded Poland in 1 September 1939. Poland had bronze 1 of 5 groszy coins. They were replaced with zinc. Zinc is a cheaper metal, and they're all dated 1939. What's interesting is they were minted in the 40s, and they had dated 39. There is a 2 groszy in bronze, but wasn't used by the Germans. They didn't mint it. Now there was also 10 and 20 groszy coins with made of nickel. Okay, they were replaced with zinc. Interesting, they're all dated 1923, also made in the early 40s. Seems an odd date, and it's been postulated why. Anything from the use of the old dies from the Polish mint to the fact that maybe using the last date, that was the last date on the issued coins in Poland, so maybe they just used that to make it seem acceptable. They had also a nickel 50 groszy coin they replaced with iron. And it's either iron or iron that's been nickel plated. I assume the iron not plated is probably a later issue. And they're dated 1938, again, minted into the 40s. As I said, I don't have any reference that actually documents that the Germans seized the nickel coins, but it makes sense to me as you see what else they did, and certainly they weren't exactly the most friendly to the Poles, so I don't see why they wouldn't have grabbed all those coins, because if you look here, the miniatures are quite healthy. You can find the groszy coins, these nickel ones are not hard to find. You see they're dating. I suspect that Poland just fixed the date and minted like that for many years, but there are many, many millions of them. I found these in junk boxes, along with the zinc ones as well. So quite an obtainable set, but I would suspect easily that the Germans could not have resisted packing these coins up and hauling them. I just unfortunately do not have any real specific hard data. And the last one is the United States. As I said, it's kind of be a negative kind of report in that Manhattan Project, we all know, was to make the atomic bomb, and they needed enriched uranium. Well, they built a plant in Oak Ridge, Tennessee called Plant Y12. It was to enrich uranium. And how do you do this? You basically spin the uranium around and use electromagnetics to suck out the isotopes. And U-235 is what you use in the weapons, the atomic bomb, which is a lot less common in natural uranium than U-238. So by using electromagnets, they're able to pull out the 235, and that's what was used in one of the atomic weapons dropped by the United States. Now, how do you make magnets? We know most of it. You've seen a magnet. Beautiful, shiny copper. They wrap copper, and that's how they make the magnetic coils. Problem, this is World War II. I already told you that you're melting coins to make war material. Certainly, you're going to be a little bit not wanting to make magnets out of copper when you need it for war material. So they basically could not use it to make their magnets. So they had to get something which was very, very similar. What's similar in electrical conductivity and properties and everything else was silver. And silver, although monetary, it was not a big war material. So they actually got silver. And they got 14,700 tons of silver. And they got it from the US Mint. They borrowed it. It wasn't bought or anything. It was just they had the bullion and they loaned it to the Manhattan Project. And as I said, there are reports that have been said that the coins, silver dollars and stuff were melted to provide the silver. That's not true. It was from bullion. So reality, I can't say silver provided it. The silver was ultimately returned not until 1 June 1970. Finally returned. You can imagine by now how it appreciated in value. And there was a loss of 36/1000%. That was the loss of it. Very, infinitesimal in the long run of things. So it basically, as I said, it's kind of important because people will report, and some of the older literature will say they melted coins for it, but that's not true. In fact, the United States during World War II minted more coins. If you look at the mintages of the dime, the quarter, the half dollar, they rose during the war because they were needed. They were needed for commerce because you had more people working, you had the industry working, you had soldiers mobilized and deployed who had to be paid. Everything else, the demand for coins in the U.S. was a lot greater, and so certainly they certainly had enough reserves that they could spare over 14,000 tons, but they still were able to keep up with the minting for the U.S. needs. So next one is, are there any questions? I know Sam said they do it. Send me any questions if you have any. But just wanted to present something probably not as well known about the fact that coins are a store of metal, and voluntarily, involuntarily was used to use for weapons of war. So a little different today, I think, but still a little known field, and I got very interested. I just wanted to spread the knowledge.
Very cool, William. Thank you. All right. Well, it looks like we had one question just come through a little bit ago. Someone's asking, who held the U.S. silver between 1945 and 1970 when it was returned, and where was it kept?
It was kept in Oak Ridge. They still kept it in the magnets because remember, we were at the Cold War. We were making nuclear weapons, so we still needed uranium. We still needed that. So it was actually because they were still using it in the magnetics to separate uranium up in Oak Ridge. And finally, as 70 came out, our arms race, etc., started to die down, and they had, they're better at making other alternatives like plutonium and other such radioactive elements. And so basically, I think when Oak Ridge finally closed, they managed to do it. And it's amazing that they managed to close and obviously take it out and scrap it. But that truckloads didn't nefariously leave the plant because the loss was probably just due to drilling and scraping and stuff. But it was still very active. They couldn't get rid of making enriched uranium. They still needed it because how many nuclear weapons did we have by the 70s? Quite a few.
Nice. Okay. One other question just came in. How do you store or treat these coins from oxidizing? I'm not sure which coins we're referring to. That's a kind of general. If whoever asked that question,
I think it's like any coins. It just depends on the metal. Obviously, the zinc coins, you've got to keep them in a dry environment, and just like every copper coin, how do you keep a Lincoln cent? The same idea. You just got to store them. The zinc ones, the zinc coins that were used to replace the nickel coins, those are toughies because they do corrode easy, and you just store them as you normally store a coin. The nickel's pretty good. I mean, it does corrode some, but generally it's a pretty hardy metal. So I mean, I don't think I don't treat them any specially than I do any of my other coins. I try to take care of them as best I can.
Nice. All right. So I think that was all the questions we had from other attendees. Only question I had is, so is this what your exhibit's going to be on at the Summer Fun Show next month or in July?
I've actually done the exhibit for the German in Japan already once. And
Nice.
I have exhibited the German and Japan ones in the past. Actually, a lot of this information, because I'm working on World War II coins in general, trying to get the history together, is that and for there's a lot of them out there, but I'm doing references and stuff. I kept, like, I call it an iceberg. I kept finding more below the surface, and all of a sudden, I just recently, within by the past year, found out about Czechoslovakia and the Romanian coins I knew about, but these other coins that started popping up in front of me, Italian. These I found it in a relatively obscure references. One was from Romania. I found it in a reference, and I unfortunately translated. But yeah, as I said, I keep digging and digging, and I keep catching all this stuff. That's why I put in Poland, because and then other things is still I have to say too. I didn't include every country, but the Germans, in other countries, the Netherlands and Denmark, they took away the coins there and then substituted them with other coins, with zinc coins, and demanded recall of those coins. Not to the degree you see there's obvious, threads in these about it. So in reality, it probably is a lot of other coins recalled they also recalled silver for their own use to buy stuff. But copper was reclaimed from other countries, Netherlands specifically, and the Netherlands just kind of hid it because they didn't like it. Very unsuccessful there.
Gotcha. All right. Well, William, thanks again. William Myers, really appreciate you doing this presentation. Very educational. Hope everyone learned something. Again, we really want to thank Gray Sheet for their partnership with the ANA eLearning Academy. Hope you'll join us for our future webinars. You can check the ANA website, money.org, for more information under the events and webinars heading. I believe on Tuesday, because Monday is a holiday, Tuesday, June 1st, at this same time, our next presentation for the Money Talks will be Doug Mudd, our Money Museum director and curator here. He'll be presenting Colonial Currency, German East Africa. So please tune in if you can. So again, William, thank you very much for a great presentation. Everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day and a phenomenal holiday weekend. Be safe, and please continue to enjoy our hobby.